Hello, now I'm recording this just a few weeks after the launch of what's been described as being quite an outstanding, phenomenal TV series called Adolescence, which launched on Netflix by the time of this recording just a few weeks ago. It has raised a huge debate here in the UK, and I believe in many countries around the world as well. Without providing any spoilers, it basically concerns the issues facing many young boys, particularly boys, who are being influenced by the so-called manosphere, particularly how to respond to perceptions of being inadequate, not being attractive to the opposite sex, and in the case of one boy profiled in the program, this has very tragic consequences in terms of his reaction to rejection by a girl in his school. And we see the fallout and devastating impact on his family as well, who are also trying to come to terms with what's going on. Quite an insight into perhaps what is very true to life, I believe. Emojis and vocabulary floating around on social media, the impressionability of young people, and the need to conform. Now, to some extent, I guess that's always been the case. Adolescence has never been easy for any of us, but it really brought home to me just how critical it is that we all, and societies and teachers and anyone that has influence within communities, parents obviously as well, do what they can to make themselves available, adults make themselves available to help young boys and of course young girls as well, but that wasn't the specific focus of this series, come to terms with what they're being persuaded online, this time when they're perhaps very impressionable, desperate to conform very often, and going through a lot of physical and emotional and psychological change as well. So I think that was really a number one message. Why I'm mentioning this on this channel is it got me thinking about how things were back in my day. A very different time, well before social media and the internet. Parents still in the dark, I think, in terms of understanding what was going on in the playground, in the classroom, and what was going on in the mind, particularly of people like me. And all the more so if you are, well, I say all the more so, certainly perhaps with a different aspect, a different emphasis perhaps, if, as I was, trying to come to terms with my own sexuality and repressing that for fear of being ostracized. I sense that possibly in some cases, and I don't think this is universal, but in some cases, in some countries, in some cultures, in some schools, it possibly has become a little bit easier for people who are trans or, let's say, gender non-conforming to be more open. There seems to be generally less stigma, even among the younger generation. However, that is far from universally the case, and this will still be an issue that someone who is very self-conscious, who is really trying to deal with something they don't necessarily understand, is going to be potentially an explosive issue. So again, really bringing home the need for understanding. And that means, I think, for the parents and for teachers and others who may be able to offer help, might be elder siblings and so on, having access to information that enables them to understand what's going on and perhaps how to navigate what can be a very difficult issue. It's not a role, it's a role of counselor and role of helping someone deal with perhaps something that you know little about yourself, something alien to your own sexuality, for example, that we are taught and must be very challenging for many. So as always, I would hope that this channel, among others, and other sorts of information can provide some pointers in that direction. And I think, too, as is happening, I believe, here in the UK, Netflix, to their credit, have allowed the series to be shown within secondary schools here in the UK. And also there's collaboration with a charity that is helping teachers and presumably parents as well, or caregivers, to navigate issues raised by the series. It seems to me that it'd be very helpful if there were similar materials made available that might help those folks, and indeed bring really into the classroom, bring into every secondary school classroom, ideally, issues around gender, around sexuality, and to really try and, if not normalize, I don't think that's necessarily the right word, but to try and educate that generation, including the influences in that generation, who may be trying to cause mischief and to sort of set the narrative in terms of how you should be, and therefore making it very uncomfortable and very difficult for young people who are coming to terms with their sexuality to come out. So I think programs like Adolescence can be very important in terms of promoting this kind of debate and actually enabling something to happen. In the UK, the Prime Minister here, Keir Starmer, even made time to watch the full series, commented on his concerns for his own children, and supported this move to allow the series to be shown within schools. So that in itself was a very positive move. And it certainly has generated a lot of debate within the media that hopefully will lead to more resources, easier access to information, and support being made available, both for those who are adolescents or coming into adolescence, and probably the education needs to start quite young, but also, of course, for the caregivers, for the parents, for the teachers, and others who are helping and really desiring to help ones that they have responsibility for, their loved ones perhaps, to navigate what I think is the most difficult, or one of the most difficult, challenging periods of our lives.